Disaster aboard the USS Constitution. Chapter 8.
Commander T-Sun entered the bridge, and I asked, "Tall, ship wide, please." "Now hear this. This is the captain. Commander T-Sun is now the first officer. That is all, Captain out." T-Sun, surprised, asked.
"Are you sure, Captain?"
I stepped over to her and stuck out my hand. As I told Tasha Peel when she asked that question, I have never been so sure. "Why are you surprised? You're a good, smart, loyal officer. You're more than qualified. You are my first officer. And, if I have my way, you will be captain of your own ship one day." Again, she was surprised.
"Is that what you said to Tasha?"
"Yes, and you know she is now captain of her own ship as you will be. Now number 1, you have the con. Get us to Sector 00. She turned to the command chair.
Aye, sir."
She turned to Hank.
"Commander Peterson, to the wormhole, if you please."
Smiling, she leaned over.
"I guess this will be your last journey aboard the Constitution, Commander. We'll all miss you."
Hank looked over his shoulder.
I have so many good friends. I'll have to stay in touch.
He looked into her eyes and mouthed.
May I still call you Pink Lady?
She nodded, a tear in her eye.
"Yes."
I had seen that exchange. Steele, take the con. Number 1, ready room. She entered the ready room, and I nodded to the couch. T-Sun, what was that exchange with Hank about? And what's this about Pink Lady? She looked at the floor.
"We were once lovers, sir. Pink Lady is my secret name, like Glow is your wife's."
I asked, "Are you in love with Hank?" She replied,
"Not in romantic love, sir. Right now, we are friends with benefits. We have decided to continue our careers, and perhaps, one day, we may want to reconnect."
I just sat there. "Well, we know he is going with Joel to be his first officer. Please let me know if there is anything I can do." She stood.
"Yes, sir."
She left to command the ship. We drove toward the wormhole at UL-12. Hank reported that we would arrive there in 6 days. I noted that at shift change, my first officer and my navigator left the bridge together, his hand on the small of her back, her arm around his waist. My only recourse was to watch. I remember telling John, so many years ago, that our ship was a love boat, maybe the love boat. Our journey to Sector 00 continued without significant incidents as the days passed. The ship hummed with its usual activities, and the crew carried out their duties diligently. However, there was underlying tension stemming from the relationship between Commander T-Sun and Commander Peterson. Once concealed from the crew, their connection became more apparent than ever. I found myself observing them closely, noticing stolen glances and secret smiles exchanged between them during briefings and off-duty moments. It was clear that their bond ran deep, even if it had transformed into a more platonic affection for the time being. I couldn't help but feel admiration and concern for both of them. One evening, as the ship sailed through the vastness of space, I received a message from T-Sun. She requested I meet her in her cabin, a request that held a sense of urgency. I reached her door, I touched the annunciator and entered. T-Sun stood near the window, her gaze fixed on the stars outside.
"Captain."
She began, her voice tinged with a mixture of sadness and determination.
"I need to tell you about something, sir."
I nodded, taking a seat nearby. "Of course, Commander. What is it?" She turned to face me, her eyes reflecting a whirlwind of emotions. "Hank and I have come to a decision.
We've realized that our current arrangement, as friends with benefits, might not be sustainable in the long run. It's becoming increasingly difficult to separate our personal lives from our professional responsibilities."
I listened intently, silently acknowledging the complexity of their situation. T-Sun continued, her voice unwavering.
"We've decided to take a step back and focus on our careers. It's not easy, but we believe it's the best course of action. Perhaps, in the future, when our paths cross again, we can reevaluate our relationship."
I admired T-Sun's maturity and commitment to her duty. It was clear that she was willing to put the needs of the ship and her career above her personal desires. I nodded, conveying my understanding and support. "Commander," I said, standing up and extending my hand, "I appreciate your honesty and dedication." She shook my hand, her grip firm and resolute.
"Thank you, Captain." I will continue to give my all to this ship and her crew.
With that, we left her cabin and returned to our respective duties. The ship pressed on towards the wormhole, our destination growing closer with each passing day. As the chapter of T. Sun and Hank's romantic involvement reached its temporary conclusion, I couldn't help but wonder what new challenges awaited us beyond the wormhole and how the dynamics aboard the ship would continue to evolve. Little did I know that disaster loomed on the horizon, ready to test our resolve and unity in ways we could never have anticipated. One day to the wormhole, Tal called out.
Captain, listen!
We heard, strained, muffled.
Mayday! Mayday! This is the USS Alexandria. We are under attack, a fleet of unidentified.
I asked, Tal, can we determine the direction to the Alexandria? I barked.
Yes, sir! 10 to 20, about 3 parsecs.
Steel, Hank poured on. Number 1 is on a plasma cannon, and Tal is on the other cannon. T-Sun ordered.
Weapons hot.
In minutes, we came upon the attack, fire at will. George, TT torpedoes, pick some targets and fire. We did a UL-6 flyby, shooting from the hip. Steel, 180. UL-6. Cannons fire at will, torpedoes, fire. Barb, 90 degrees port. Now. Barb, 180, UL-3. Weapons fire at will. Our attacks killed 6 ships, and the remainder of the enemy fleet ran like scalded dogs. Tal, can we raise the Alexandria? He turned and replied.
On screen, sir!
I saw the captain. Grady, how can we help? He replied.
Dave, send me O'Reilly.
I looked at the screen. Grady, O'Reilly has passed, he said.
Dave, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
I replied, I'll send George and his team. Number 1, great job. I guess you've passed through your baptism of fire early on. I knew I made the right choice. I had observed that Soon's expertise proved invaluable as she manned the plasma cannon, and her calm spirit kept morale high, even as the situation grew dire. But the enemy fleet, realizing it was outmatched, retreated into the depths of space, leaving the Alexandria battered but salvageable. With a respite from the heat of the battle, we focused on rescue and recovery operations. T. Vass and her team rushed to aid the injured crew members of the Alexandria. At the same time, George led his engineers to work tirelessly to stabilize Alexander. In the aftermath of the battle, as we tended to the wounded and assessed the damage, I couldn't help but reflect on the strength and resilience of our crew. The Constitution had faced disaster head-on and emerged victorious, thanks to every officer and crewman's unwavering dedication, courage, and teamwork. The exhausted crew still carried on with pride in our ship and crew. We had resumed our course toward the wormhole, towing the crippled Alexandria, and the bond among our crew members grew even stronger. We had faced adversity together again, and the experience had forged an unbreakable connection that would carry us through future challenges. As the Constitution sailed on, I had faith in our crew and their ability to overcome whatever lay ahead. Little did I know that disaster loomed on the horizon, ready to test our resolve and unity in ways we could never have anticipated. We drove toward the wormhole at UL-12, Hank reported that we would arrive there in a day. As we ventured closer to the wormhole, the Constitution's atmosphere crackled with anticipation and trepidation. The recent battle had been a stark reminder that danger lurked around every corner, and we couldn't afford to let our guard down. Our arrival at the wormhole was imminent, and the crew prepared for the unknown that awaited us on the other end. We conducted exhaustive scans and analysis to gather as much information as possible to ensure a safe passage. We wanted to make sure to see all the stranded ships as we had seen before. Finally, the moment arrived. The Constitution positioned itself at the event horizon, its gravitational pull tugging at our vessel. With an unwavering determination, I gave the order. Number 1, take us through the wormhole. 16 nanoseconds later, we were just outside the Gavergan wormhole, close to home. Unfortunately, the remainder of the fleet that attacked Alexandria awaited us. We could not maneuver as we had before because the Alexandria was in tow, and we didn't have time to cut them loose. We were also not willing to sacrifice our brothers and sisters in Alexandria. We had one choice, and that was to stand and fight. The Alexandria powered up her weapons, and we fought as we had never fought before, taking and inflicting as much damage as possible. During the 7-hour battle, the plasma cannons took out 2 of the remaining 6 enemy ships, and the remaining 4 ran like the cowardly dogs they were. As we were able to start breathing again, the comm shouted,
Captain, there is too much damage to the port engine pod. We are going to have to jettison the pod.
T-Sun shouted.
George, are there crewmen in the pod?
He replied.
Yes. 10 crewmen are trapped in the pod.
She sprang into action, racing to the engineering section. As she entered the section, she asked.
George, how much time?
He replied.
No more than half an hour.
She yelled.
Captain, we have about 30 minutes to rescue 10 crewmen.
I jumped up. Hank, you have the con. On my way, Pink Lady. I ran to the engineering section, and with T-Sun, George, and I wielding cutting torches, we made an opening in the bulkhead to reach the trapped crewmen. T-Sun and I squeezed through and began to free the crewmen. I shouted, George, get T-Vass down here, these crewmen will need a doctor. We worked together, freed 9 crewmen, and got them through the hole we had cut. Then I heard,
Captain, we've got to cut her loose, now.
I put the last crewman on T-Sun's shoulders and told her to run. As I began to follow, I tripped and knocked myself unconscious. When I revived, I was in sickbay, T-Vass standing over me. Am I dead? She replied.
No, dear. George and 2 of his engineers pulled you out before releasing the pod. Hank was able to maneuver the ship far enough away so that we and the Alexandria were not significantly damaged. We could limp home. Larry and the Bradley were escorting us home.
The next words out of my mouth were, did we lose anyone? T-Vass sighed with a mix of relief and sorrow.
We lost 2 crew members, Captain. Lieutenant Simmons and Ensign Rodriguez didn't make it. I did everything I could, but the injuries were just too extensive. I know the sacrifice you and T-Sun made. I'm sorry.
Her voice conveyed the weight of the loss, and I closed my eyes briefly, offering a silent prayer. It was a heavy price to pay, but in the face of the battle we had just fought, it was a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of our crew. We had lost 4 crewmen, Stella, O'Reilly, Simmons, and Rodriguez, and my heart was heavy for the loss. I gathered myself, pushing aside my physical pain, and asked, what's the ship's status, T-Vass? Can we make it back home? She nodded, her expression determined.
With George and his team working tirelessly, we managed to stabilize the Constitution. Although we suffered extensive damage, we should be able to limp back to Federation space. The Alexandria is in worse shape, but Captain Grady assures me they can hold on until we reach safety. Larry and the Bradley will tow us if necessary.
I let out a sigh of relief, grateful for the resilience of our crew and the strength of our vessels. Good work, T-Vass. Keep me updated on the progress, and make sure the crew receives all necessary medical attention. We'll get through this and bring our people home. As I slowly rose from the sickbay bed, determined to get back on my feet, I thought about our battles and the challenges that still lay ahead. The journey to Sector 00 had been far from what I had anticipated, but it had tested us and pushed us to our limits. Nevertheless, we had come together as a crew, fought bravely, and stood firm in the face of adversity. With renewed determination, I made my way back to the bridge, ready to lead our ship and crew through the final stretch of our journey. We may have been battered and bruised, but we were still the Constitution, a symbol of hope and resilience in the vastness of space. Hank asked to speak to me. I nodded toward the ready room. What is it, Hank? He replied.
Sir, could you? I want to stay with the Constitution. I've asked T-Sun to marry me. She said, yes.
I'll talk to John. Admiral Self. I'm sure he'll say, okay. Hank left the ready room, smiled, nodded to T-Sun, and mouthed.
Pink Lady, I love you.
She returned it all. I remembered Stella sitting at the helm, smiling at Tasha, just as Barbara was smiling. I leaned over. Barb, what do you think? Hank and the Pink Lady want to marry. He wants to stay with us. She replied.
That's because we're the best damn ship in the Navy.
I couldn't agree more. We had lost 4 crewmen on this mission and an old friend. But, as we limped on to Sector 00, we could hold our heads high. We had survived, and were still the fastest, most powerful, most versatile ship in the Navy.